Okay, good afternoon all. I've certainly drawn the rough end of the stick here. I have to now entertain you for about an hour, the toughest hour I reckon of the whole symposium. So I appreciate that you've had a big day. We've heard from some amazing speakers, but I hope that my journey from sitting amongst in this exact hall back in 2017 to going on to making what I hope is a difference in the world can help galvanise all of your thoughts from today. We've had some incredible speakers. So how can you go on to do something like what they've done? You know, to go on and actually make a tangible impact in the world because our world needs it. So that's what I hope we can achieve today. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Jack. I'm 27 and I'm from a small city in Australia. Hands up who knows the Great Barrier Reef? Yep, perfect. Well, I'm about 2 hours boat ride from the Great Barrier Reef, so a small town called Townsville. But look, as mentioned before, the USLS... Oh, hello, anyone from Townsville? Close enough? Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Look, can I just start off by saying it's an absolute privilege to be here. As mentioned, this event holds a special place in my heart, and I'm really thankful to Mr. Kim Solomon and also to Janice Leong for the opportunity to be here today. They do a fantastic event every single year. Okay, introductions are over. Let's get into the business. You'll see up there on the screen, we've got a HP laptop. I want to ask, hands up in this room, who owns a laptop? Very good. Okay, I don't have to hand out any new ones then. Now keep your hands up if you use this laptop every single day. Keep your hands up if you've used it today during the USLS, because I've seen there's been a fair few people that have. We have a room full of future leaders and scholars, so I'm going to assume that most of you use your laptop for study and for work. Put your hands up if that's true. Okay, here's where you can give your hands a rest. How many of you think that you could continue to study effectively, maintain your GPA, complete assignments, submit applications to exciting opportunities like the USLS, work remotely, meet people from all over the world and so on without having one of these for a year? Anyone think they could do that? This may not be your reality, but it is the reality of 3.4 billion people living on our planet today. Over 1/3 of humanity experience some form of digital inequality. Now, as my accent can tell, and I've already told you so far, that I'm Australian, and I'm incredibly lucky to be from the third most developed country of 192 in the world, according to the UN's Human Development Index. So it might shock you then to learn that even in this development context, 1 million Australian students do not own a laptop at home. That's a quarter of school-aged Australians denied access to the tools needed to learn, dream, and achieve in what is a digital age today. For them and 1 billion other students around the world, learning simply stopped during the pandemic. And even as the pandemic has subsided, the expectation in Australia and much of the developed world is that students will have a laptop to learn on, just as they have books and pencil cases, uniforms and backpacks. Those children who cannot afford one are immediately disadvantaged and marginalised in the classroom. Now we'll head further north to Australia's closest neighbour, Papua New Guinea, which sits on the other side of the development spectrum, placing 158th in the Human Development Index. 94% of its students will not use a computer when they go to school today, tomorrow, or the next day. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the 6% who do, but just one more stat for you. 88% of young Papua New Guineans have never used a computer. Now, have a think about when you first used a computer. Have a think about that now. Cast your mind back to that, because we're going to get into that a bit later on in my own experience. So 88% of Papua New Guineans under the age of 25 have never spent more than a minute on a computer, and I've personally met many of them, 2 million Papua New Guineans who have never even seen a computer. Can you believe that in 2024? Now, growing up in the relative privilege of regional Australia, I first saw and used a computer in 2003. That's me in grade 1. Look, the computers were about as different as one of the laptops you've got here as could possibly be. It certainly wasn't as pleasant an experience. It was a giant box that sounded like a jet aircraft when you fired it up. It had cords coming in and out of it, and it was just quite ridiculous, the sort of noises they would make. Downloads would sometimes take days. Now, my beautiful wife, Chloe, she grew up nearby in a household of 5 school-aged children. So she would remember that you used to have to dial up the internet. And if one person in that household dared to pick up the phone, the entire internet would crash. I mean, it really was the dark ages and ancient history indeed. But jokes aside, I crossed the digital divide in 2003, and I might not look all that phased in that smug grade 1 portrait, but it really was a big deal when you look back at it. In 2003, I had access to a computer. However archaic it may have been, I had access to the internet where the greatest collections of knowledge that humanity has ever assembled are held. And 21 years on, I've never lost that access. But 21 years on, billions of people have not yet gained it. And this is what we'll explore today, the digital divide, one of the greatest but least understood development challenges of the 21st century. A gaping chasm which keeps people from the remarkable opportunities and potential that the digital world has to offer all of us. Now, a lot's changed since 2003. The world has experienced 2 decades of unrelenting and extraordinary technological innovation. Now, hands up in the room who is a serial TikToker. Come on, own up. The stats tell a very different story to this. But anyway, get this. In 2003, you could not send an image via a mobile phone. In the next 24 hours, 170 million images will be shared across the globe, I'm sure by many USLS delegates and closet TikTok addicts. Now, who in the room today, I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little bit rude here, but who in the room today was not born in 2003? Okay, I certainly feel a bit older now. So this may shock you, but in 2003, in those ancient times, when dinosaurs and Romans roamed the earth, drivers used to use these big, thick books called street directories just to find their way around. Every car had one. Google Maps, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Zoom, Tinder, Uber, and their iPhone were either in their infancy or they didn't even exist yet. People used to read these big broadsheet newspapers every single morning to work out what was going on in the world. They studied physical maps to find their way around places. They read these gigantic encyclopedias, you may have seen them, to complete assignments. And they poured through phone books to find services, order food, or buy products. And you'll see those big yellow things up on the screen there. That was Uber Eats back in 2003. But if we cast our mind forward to now, we work, we study, we meet, we shop, we learn, and we entertain ourselves all on one device that sits in the palm of our hand and has more possibilities and more capability than anything that our species has ever envisaged. The average person who owns a smartphone, so all of you, spend a quarter of their lives on it, a quarter of their lived experience on their iPhone. This transformation has all taken place in my lifetime, and I think that's saying something because I'm only 27. But these technological advancements have been staggering for those of us who have been a part of it, but they've been staggeringly irrelevant for those who are left behind. So whilst us privileged folk in the room surge ahead with conversations on the metaverse, generative AI, the Internet of Things, and blockchain, half the world is still waiting for the turn of the millennium, still waiting for my 2003 moment. Half the world are left behind. And so whilst digital innovation moves fast, digital inclusion lags far behind. And while digital inclusion may have stalled, digital exclusion has only become worse. Because while digital tools were a bit of an oddity or a novelty back in 2003, they've become ubiquitous and indispensable to the human experience in 2024. So being digitally excluded in today's world does not just mean missing out on opportunities, it actually means being denied citizenship to a digital world or a digital lifesphere across which so much of the human experience transpires today. So how do we fix this? How do we overcome the scourge of device poverty affecting 3 billion people daily? Well, remember how I said that 1 million Australian students do not have a laptop at home to study with? Well, here's the answer. In Australia, we throw away 500,000 digital devices every single year. 500,000 devices, the bulk of which are perfectly functional, like those on your tables today, but have just been replaced by wealthy corporates when the warranty's expired or the new model has come out. They end up crushed up and rotting away in landfills, 500,000 digital devices, just like the ones on your table today. Now, every second, this always blows me away when I talk about this, but every second, the world throws away the equivalent of 800 laptops into e-waste. That's 70 million a day. So not only do we have this enormous digital divide that's keeping people from opportunities and services, we're literally throwing away the tools that we need to solve it. Again, digital innovation has moved so fast that we've not yet worked out how to make access to these tools universal and their disposal in any way sustainable. 7 years ago, I sat right there in the UN SCAP hall at the 2017 USLS, and ever since that day, I've been on a mission to change what I've just been talking about. So ladies and gentlemen, delegates from 46 countries, and fellow members of a generation of change makers, I would like to shift the focus away from the alarming to the inspiring, from the problem to the solution, from the 94% of Papua New Guinean students who don't have access to a digital device to the 6% who do. This is my story, and I hope it inspires you. That day at the USLS, I got to hear from some extraordinary change makers, just like you have today. And I heard about their journeys, and I must admit it inspired me to do something for the betterment of the world. I wasn't sure what, I wasn't sure how, but I was sure that I wanted to devote my life, to the service of humanity. And without even knowing what it meant or what it looked like, I gave this feeling a name, just so it could feel real. I called it LiteHaus, and I think I was probably sitting in that desk about 3 rows back, right there when I did it. I even wrote that name in my USLS notebook. And it just goes to show you never know the power of ideas that will rush through your head this week. It's a very inspiring week, so make sure you write them down and give them a chance to bear fruit. So 1 month after the USLS, I had the unique opportunity to visit the remote Western Highlands province of Papua New Guinea. Is there any Papua New Guinean delegates in the room at all? Okay, never mind. So I visited PNG for my honours thesis, which was focused on barriers to human development in remote communities. Now, remember, Papua New Guinea is one of the least developed countries on the planet. And while the profound sense of community and connection to the environment makes for a very happy society, systemic corruption, diabolical infrastructure, and the effective remoteness has impoverished a great deal of the population. Now, while I was there, you'll see me there with a clipboard and my UNDP shirt that I got at the USLS, by the way. I walked on foot and surveyed 400 village households on their experiences accessing education, health, and employment opportunities. And I also had the opportunity to visit the Kuta Primary School. The school's very remote, and some students walk up to 3 hours barefoot across mountainous terrain to get there every day. Now, this didn't surprise me, but what did surprise me was that when they arrived, they had a learning environment which was actually pretty similar to what I grew up in Australia in 2003. The classroom was sturdy. There were tables, chairs, blackboards, bookshelves, books, paper, pens, teacher, you name it. But something was missing. Something was lacking for this to truly be a quality education, and that something was technology. There was not a single laptop or desktop throughout the school for those students to learn the digital skills they would need to carry into the workforce. No access to online encyclopedias to learn about the world around them. And at that moment, in that classroom, I thought to myself, how can this be a quality education in today's world? That was my first thought. My second thought was, I can do something about this, because in my hands that day was a white Lenovo laptop. My third thought was, I cannot accept this reality. I cannot accept that if I walk out that door and continue on with my life, that they will not have access to the digital world of opportunities like I did. I simply could not look the other way. So on September the 16th, 2017, I donated my own laptop to the Kuta Primary School. And I got a bit excited, as young people do, in front of some media. They were there covering a different story, but they heard about what I was doing. And I got excited, and I promised to come back with 12 more computers and build a computer lab at that school. 2 days later, I was at the airport flying home, and on page 3 of the national newspaper, which has a readership of about 2 million people. There's a big photo of me, as you can see up on the screen, promising 12 laptops to a school, and I thought, wow, now I really do have to follow through with this or I'll have a whole nation coming after me. So the next day, I formed LiteHaus International to fulfill that promise of one computer lab to one school. And fundraising began by asking my best mate Luke for $20. Now, if he was in the room today, he'd tell you that he was the first donor ever to support LiteHaus, but funnily enough, we haven't seen another cent from him, but we'll go chase him for that later. But in those early days, we had to find ways because no one was just going to walk up to us and cut us a big check. We had big ideas, but we really had no idea what we were doing. So we had to find money ourselves. So we manufactured ways to carve out funds to support our dream. We recycled scrap steel and old cans and bottles, containers for cash. We raffled prizes at local pubs and clubs on the weekends. We found volunteers. We formed a board. We held meetings in my parents' garage. They were thrilled about that. We collected computer parts. We rebuilt and salvaged laptops that would otherwise have gone into landfill. We even made our own shirts. We built our own website and we faked it until we made it. And we did whatever it took to deliver that first computer lab. And 6 months later, there I stood back at the Kuta Primary School with 12 laptops and a pair of scissors to open what I did not know at the time would be the first functional computer lab in any of the 3,500 primary schools in Papua New Guinea. So it was a great moment, but I knew I couldn't stop there. So hours after the launch, I stood alongside my great mate Peter Rhyme, who still manages our projects in PNG, and we set ourselves a goal of one day reaching every school with electricity in the Western Highlands province. And without giving away a spoiler for the rest of my speech, we achieved that last year, and our work has now expanded beyond those borders to 15 provinces throughout the country. But at that moment, we really were just a dream. We were based in Mum and Dad's garage. I worked full-time in other jobs for 3 years, growing LiteHaus after hours, very late nights, and just grinding away at that big dream. And slowly but surely, we started delivering lab after lab into school after school, and people started to pay attention. And as the years went on, through sheer persistence and momentum, our capacity to deliver impact began to balloon across countries. There were game-changing moments along the way. You know, those, in the movies, they all go, oh, there's this moment that everything changed, That we've had those too. But ultimately, they haven't defined our journey. Effort has. The impact we have created, which you'll see up on the screen there, and I hope to share more stories with you, has been the result of relentless hard work and an unwavering belief that a better, more inclusive world is possible. So fast forward to today, and this is what one promise has been able to achieve. From that first laptop donated in 2017, we've successfully repurposed almost 15,000 laptops for students in need. If we placed one of these at every single desk in the hall, we would fill it 30 times over. 6,000 of these laptops and desktops now sit in 384 school computer labs across Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, Solomon Islands, Samoa, Fiji, and soon, next week, Cambodia, making digital learning a reality for over 200,000 of these nations' future leaders. For them, the devices have made more than 1.5 million hours of digital usage possible, hours laden with creativity, learning, networking, and entertainment, because in addition to the digital devices and our digital skills training, we've also provided access to an completely offline e-library called NewNet, which has 6.2 million educational articles, including all of Wikipedia. This is transformational for students whose school libraries lack quality learning material. From that first $20 note from my mate, we've raised over $8 million, converting almost all of it into social value injected into the close to 500 communities that we have served. Now, this year alone, we'll deploy 12,500 more devices to students in need across 10 countries, reaching new markets in Kiribati, Timor-Leste, Cambodia, and right here in Thailand. Next week, I'll be installing 225 devices into remote schools in Cambodia. And by the time I return to the USLS in 2025, should Janice and Kim extend me that privilege, we will have positively impacted the lives of 500,000 students. So we've got a busy year ahead. Ultimately, at LiteHaus International, we're driven by that firm belief that a quality education can only be a digital education in today's world. We refuse to accept a world of inequality where some people simply do not get to dream. A world where billions are kept apart from opportunity, kept apart from realizing their dreams by an ever-growing digital divide. A digital world where postcodes too often determine participation. Our dream is to create a digitally empowered world where everybody holds in their hands their tools of opportunity and where there are no barriers to dreams. Now, so far, I've shared with you a lot of numbers, but here's the thing. You cannot hope to measure with measly numbers something as beautiful, raw, and human as impact. When you deliver impact, you deliver hope, inspiration, happiness, belief, dignity, freedom, even salvation. And at the risk of irking an academic or two, good luck capturing that wholly and neatly in a metric or a framework. Because you don't measure impact, you feel it. You share it through stories, and today I wish to share with you a couple of gems. The first one begins where change should too, close to home. Remember how I told you that 25% of Australian students do not own a laptop at home? Well, unfortunately, digital exclusion cuts even deeper across racial and regional lines. In many remote Indigenous communities in Australia, the digital device ownership rate plummets to less than 5%. Think about that for a second. It's 1 in 20 students in a school owning a laptop. There's one particular school in Far North Queensland, not far from where I live, where only 2 students out of 194 in the secondary cohort had a laptop at home. This is Australia. Just keep that in mind. This is in Australia, not far from where I live. Now, when I visited that town in 2020, I handed over a laptop to their school captain, who was one of 70 students we gifted a laptop to. He was an exceptionally talented student, top of every class. But when his guidance counsellor asked him where he saw his career taking him, he said, oh, well, you know, maybe the mechanic, or I could work at the bakery or the service station just down the road. So his eyes were set on the horizons he'd only ever known and no further. But shortly after owning a digital device, his view of the world was transformed, and so too his view of what was possible for his life. He Googled university and he applied online on his laptop. And 4 years later, he's on the verge of graduating with an engineering degree. He's one of the top in the class as well. And he's passed the device on to his sister. He no longer needs the device because he's actually learnt to build his own, and he's replaced it. Now, every 3 hours, LiteHaus provides a student with their own digital device somewhere across Australia. Whether it be African refugee migrant students learning English from scratch by watching Congolese movies with English subtitles on YouTube, or a young woman continuing her schooling remotely from hospital whilst battling bone cancer, 15-year-olds in regional towns running online businesses, or blind children learning through audio aids and screen readers, the 8,500 devices we've distributed across Australia have had a profound impact and are in remarkable hands. Now, the second story that I would like to share took place last year in Papua New Guinea. I was in the back of a Land Cruiser in Chimbu province. This is about as remote as it gets. And we're coming towards the end of a very big day where we'd actually installed 4 new digital classrooms in schools. Our last stop was the Kunabao Primary School. And I need you just to picture this. I don't have a video for this, so you've got to use your imagination. About 1,500 community members had gathered in incredible traditional dress to welcome us and celebrate the momentous occasion of gaining a computer lab and access to the digital world in their school. It was quiet as we drove into the school, but then suddenly pandemonium. People as far as the eye could see, absolutely unbridled joy. There were hordes of kids rushing the car, wanting to shake our hands, and for the next 3 minutes, we jostled our way through the crowd to cut the ribbon on what was our 40th digital classroom. I climbed up onto the stage, and there was just, like looking out like today, just a sea of smiles and happiness and energy. And suddenly, out of nowhere, came this deep, howling cry. It punctuated the air, it cut through and silenced the cheering. And then from behind me, I felt a woman grasp me like this. And I realized very quickly that this was a mother's cry. And you'll see her up on the screen there. Now, this was a mother not weeping out of anguish, but actually sheer joy, relief, and gratitude that her children would grow up with something that she had never had herself. Not just a computer, but the opportunity to be a part of something bigger. The opportunity to dream. And on that day, to her, I was opportunity, and I can tell you she was not letting me go. It's always fascinated me that those who have never used a computer seem to understand most and appreciate its possibilities. If ever you wanted to know what digital access can do for somebody, you don't need to listen to TED Talks from tech innovators. Just speak to a mother breaking her back every day to give her children a chance to be something more. And you know how they say that mums are always right? Well, this mother was absolutely spot on, because those computers have changed the learning journeys of her children and their classmates. I've seen it with my own eyes. I visited more than 300 under-resourced schools on this journey. Few have been as poorly resourced as the Kunabao Primary School, where I met this wonderful woman. So when I first visited that school, I was struck by the complete lack of modern learning tools or material or inspiring content or anything that might drive learning and forward thinking. The shelves had held ragged, outdated books covering obscure topics from the colonial era, including random phone books filling space in the library. Encyclopedia collections were incomplete, and having been published in 1978, they were telling students that the US president was Jimmy Carter. A world map on the wall was that old that it featured the USSR and Yugoslavia. This environment cannot hope to offer the quality education which SDGs aspire to. A child's brain is a sponge, and if there's no water to drench it in, it will remain brittle and dry. And when I first visited Kunabao Primary School, it appeared to be gripped by a long, harsh drought. Fast forward to today, the second picture in the middle of the screen is from my most recent trip to Papua New Guinea and the Kunabao Primary School. And 8 months after we completed the digital classroom and that dear mother held me with all the desperate hope that she could muster, I was astonished to find that the teachers had managed to integrate the use of computers and the accompanying offline e-library into every single subject that they taught. I sat in the computer lab and watched as 21 students from 3 classes, social sciences, mathematics, and English, use the devices seamlessly for their assignments. And remember, they used to be part of the 88% of Papua New Guineans who had never seen a device before. But best of all, each student in the room, including the children of the crying mother, had gone through our self-guided digital skills training, first to even be in the position to navigate such incredible material. These digital skills will serve as a passport for success, as the students you see on the screen there will live and work well into the 2070s. So if we live in a world now where technology dominates and is ubiquitous to the human condition, imagine what it's like in 5 decades' time when they are leading their countries. 12 months post-installation, and every child of that school, including the children of the crying mother and the children living with disabilities who are too often cast aside in conventional classrooms, have had the opportunity to begin their own digital learning journeys. And whilst digital transformation policies are the talk of the town in Papua New Guinea's capital and in government policy, only 277 of the 3,500 schools across the country have a computer lab to prepare students for the digital age, and LiteHaus International has built them all. The Kunabao Primary School, along with dozens of others I've visited recently, serve as proof of just what is possible when you give people an opportunity to engage with the digital world of possibilities. Now, we've empowered over 250,000 students with digital learning tools and opportunities since 2017. It's a big number, but it's just a number. And it can't quite encapsulate our purpose as an organisation. But that student up there on the right-hand side of the screen, I think he does just that. I met him in 2019, and he was one of 4 students that I sat next to in their very first interaction with a computer ever. The very first. Now, as you can imagine, in those early stages, it's very, very slow going with the students. Now, I'll just share a brief interlude. I'm just looking at that mouse in the second picture in the middle of the screen there. Now, one of the students one day in PNG, I was showing them how to use the computer. And I said, just move the mouse, get hold of the mouse, and move it backwards just a little bit. This student grabbed hold of the mouse and ripped the thing back like he was starting a lawnmower and rip the entire mouse out of the computer. So this is the level that we're dealing with when I first met this student on the screen. So for most of them, excitement contends with astonishment, and not a lot of progress is made in that first couple of tries. Most of them struggle to write even their own name. But as I turned to my right, I noticed that this one boy had written an entire paragraph with capital letters and perfect punctuation. So he'd mastered the shift key, backspace key, enter down, and the space bar. It was absolutely flawless. And in 15 minutes of ever touching a laptop, he was able to produce what would have taken me years to learn. Imagine just what he can achieve with the same privilege and opportunities which have carried us to be in this room today. We are all poorer as a world for his ideas, his talents, his energies, languishing on the other side of the digital divide. Every person deserves their place in the digital world, and the digital world, our world, deserves them. And when I look at this student's eyes, I can't help but think that in his mind is a groundbreaking innovation of some sorts. He was just extraordinary. So building a bridge across social inequities enables the immense human capability that's currently isolated and ignored to actively contribute to the fight to change the world. And change the world we must. It's my daily privilege to live the dream I had at the USLS in 2017 and drive an incredible vehicle for social change. Its fuel is the why, and these stories are our why. They remind me on days of doubt and despair that the digital world and all the opportunity it brings would have remained beyond the reach of 250,000 people if I had have looked the other way, or if I hadn't have made the decision to act. So let me ask you this: who else is going to change the world? If not us, then who? I'm young, but I'm already older young. Last year I was here with my beautiful wife Chloe, only days before our wedding in New Zealand, and we hope to bring life into this world before long. Now you see, all the time those UN climate emergency projections tend to end at 2100. My wife and I will be 103 when that comes around, to welcome a new century. So I'm not sure if we'll make it, but our children will hopefully live to see that day and many others beyond it. We always talk about the 21st century, but the 22nd century is just on the doorstep. So my children will live to see the 2.5 Celsius increase and the loss of entire island nations such as Tuvalu to rising sea levels if our generation doesn't right the ship. At present, the status quo for our world, the trajectory we are currently on, is a concoction of a less hospitable planet, a diminished quality of life, significant displacement, and deeper divisions between all of us. And I wrote that last year, and I just think that's gone to another level this year. I'm sure you'd all agree. That should shock us, not into fear, but rather into action, because we cannot accept the status quo. Just as I refused to accept the status quo of digital exclusion that day that I handed over that very first laptop. So I ask all of you, I'm going to be a bit different to the other speakers, I'm going to challenge you. Will we look the other way to all of these challenges, or will we look those challenges in the eye? Will we stand up to social and environmental challenges, or will we simply toss them to our children to grapple with against even greater time constraints? Or will we step up, stare the challenges between the eyes, and change the world? We do not need a why to change the world. After all, when faced with this potentially grim future, we don't have a choice. However, we do need a how, and this is where the world is laden with diverse opinions and solutions, some listened and agreed upon more than others. Solutions to the greatest challenges of our species' existence cannot be distilled down into one-liners, no matter how hard populist conservatives on the election trail may try. Fighting climate change and rebalancing intergenerational inequalities are astronomical, planet-wide tasks, but I do believe that that we can weather the challenge is to bridge the digital divide, achieve gender equality, raise life expectancy, or save the planet. There is an underlying precondition which must be achieved, and the good thing is every one of us in the room can do something about it. We need a world of net producers, not net consumers. So what does that mean? Well, we need to create a surplus of social good in the world, a critical mass which can tip the scales and change the course of history. We're all consumers. We all use electricity. We all need food to function and water, and each of us is a carbon and ecological burden on the earth, and there's no escaping that no matter how hard you try. We have to accept that and not demonize it. I burnt 700 kilograms of carbon emissions just to be here to speak with you today. But on this journey, I've saved over 600 tons of emissions from entering the Earth's atmosphere. And perhaps today I just might inspire some of you to deliver something similar. Equally, I've lent on the support and help of many thousands of people, but in turn, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people. The last thing I'm suggesting is that we need all 500 of you to go on to start an NGO. No. We need brave and ethical innovators and business leaders. We need honest politicians. Good luck. We need talented engineers. We need caring doctors. We need active citizens and volunteers. And we need well-principled teachers and, above all, good parents. What I'm insisting on is that our planet, our species, and its future demands of you that you give more than what you get, and you leave a net positive effect on the world. We, the living, are the generation of unrivaled opportunities, but we're also the generation of obligation. We must relish the challenges and opportunities that stand before us and act. If we become the first net productive or net positive generation of all time, we will have turned the tide. We will have changed the world. But that's all well and good to say, but how? How can us mere mortals rise to the challenge? I know what it's like to feel small and overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges and the scale of this world. Shortly before I went to the USLS in 2017, I visited India. And for anyone who's ever been to India, it can be a very overwhelming place. Incredible population and people everywhere. And I remember sitting down at the Shilda railway station in Calcutta, and I watched an unrelenting flow of human beings walking in every direction. And I thought, wow, this world is enormous, and I'm just like a little speck of sand on a beach. I sat there feeling like an irrelevant little boy. But I too have sat in your chair in this hall. I wrote in your notebooks. I had your dreams. I had your ambitions. I felt your stresses and worries, and I had your doubts. I was where you are just 7 years ago, in the same room, staying in the same hotel, having the same breakfast, and now I'm on track to have hauled 500,000 young people into the digital age by the next USLS. All from one laptop, all from one moment, not accepting a problem. So do not, for a second, lose hope in the face of the unprecedented scale of global challenges that we face. Because remember, we're also unprecedentedly educated, resourced, capable, and connected as a generation. Do not let people tell you that something is impossible. As youth, our greatest value proposition that we can offer the world is our natural optimism, our belief in our future, our crazy ideas, and our refusal to believe conventional wisdom. So our world needs you to dream, to hope, and to inspire. And I hope today I've offered some kindling for your minds. I hope my story can help you believe that changing the world can be done, and that it simply must be done. My fellow future leaders and change makers, it has been an absolute privilege to speak to all of you today. I wish you every success on your own social impact journeys, whatever they may look like. And I look forward to working with all of you to leave behind a net positive world to our children, because we are the generation of opportunity and obligation. Time's up, we're up, it's time for us to lead. Thank you.